What's up everyone, Federico here. This is my first Q&A video and I hope you will find it interesting. Please feel free to leave more questions in the comments and I'll make sure to go over them in one of my next videos. And before we begin, I also want to thank you all for the support because I just reached 2,000 subscribers on this channel and that's super cool to me. So yeah, thank you again. Let's start with the first question. It's my friend Francesco Filigoi who's asking favorite piece of gear. Alright, so if we are talking about studio gear, I'd say my favorite piece of gear is my pair of Amphion 118 speakers. These are just incredible speakers and I basically listen to music through them pretty much all day. And since I started mixing on them, my mixes are translating better. I think they're very linear and it's very easy to hear clipping and distortion. So they basically make me happy while working, which is the most important thing. And yeah, so I'd say if I had to keep one thing from my current setup, it will be those speakers. But if we're not talking about studio gear specifically, I'd say something that I will never sell is my Music Man Stingray. It's this one, just a basic black 4-string Stingray with a single humbucker from 2006. This is actually my first good bass. I had a cheap bass before that I used to practice, but then when I got really into bass, I basically worked the whole summer and saved up for it, and I was so happy when I got it. That bass has been gigged to hell and back through all of Italy and Europe when I was younger, so it really bears a lot of memories. Next question, Albesua is asking, modern metal tone, do you prefer active or passive pickups? Okay, so in my opinion, you can get great sounding guitar tones out of both of them. So for example, I did Defamed Circles with active pickups. These were EMG 808s. And I did the Wind Covenant's Damnation with passive pickups. These were bare knuckle aftermaths. Honestly, I like both, and most of the times I tend to prefer passive pickups because of their dynamics. However, if you're playing really heavy styles with a lot of chugs and riffs, actives can also be a great choice. Sometimes the compressed output from active pickups can actually help in getting a thicker and more consistent tone, because you're basically hitting the amp always at the same level. And it also depends on your picking hand, your technique, and the rest of the signal chain. So if you have the chance, I suggest trying both, and then you can see for yourself what works best for you. Next, Peter Hard is asking, do you work full-time as a producer musician, or do you also have other sources of income? So I've been working full-time as a producer and mixing engineer for the last 5 years, and it's a bit intense at times because it takes up all of my time and then some, but it's actually very rewarding, and I'm super grateful that I'm able to do what I love every day. Next, two similar questions. Mr. Leak is asking, when are you guys releasing new songs with the Wind Covenant? And XX Nero 13XX is asking, when can we expect more tunes? Recently found you guys single slaps. First of all, thank you guys so much for the kind words, really happy you liked it, and for those who haven't heard it, I leave you a link in the description, so please go check it out. We're actually working right now on the release of the second song. The video is ready. We are now working on the artwork, band, photo shooting, and a few other details. So I can't really say when it's going to be released, but I will say at the end of the summer, pretty much. Tapion17 is asking biggest influences, and I hope Tapion is a reference to the coolest character in Dragon Ball, and I will fight anyone that tries to convince me that he is not. But anyways, my influences honestly are all over the place. When I started playing guitar and bass, I was really into punk rock, so I liked the Millen Collins, the Ataris, Rancid and stuff like that. Then I moved to like heavier, more proggy stuff, like Protest the Hero, The Human Abstract, Between the Buried and Me, Sixth, as well as more classic stuff like Tool and Nine Inch Nails. And at the same time, I also like the more melodic things like mid-2000s emo, which I'm still a fan of, like Seosin, Finch, and Author Nights. And for some time, I was really into that 2008-2012 post-hardcore scene with like Emma Rosa, Hands Like Houses, Memphis May Fire. And that's actually when I started producing and what led me to work with a ton of metalcore and post-hardcore bands. After that, I just kept listening to anything that I found creative without genre boundaries. So I've been into like synthwave, lo-fi stuff, emo trap, post-rock, so as I said, all over the place. Lately I've been listening to a lot of top 40 pop hits, both international and Italian, because I love the production style. And as far as heavy music, My current favorites will be Fit for an Autopsy, Crystal Lake, and Invent Anime. With the Wind Covenant, I'd say the main influences were Sixth, Monuments, Born of Osiris, Viltiarta, Northlane, Periphery, and stuff like that. Next question, Jesus Guitar Stuff is asking, how do you know when a sound will work in a mix? Not only guitar-wise, also with snare, bass, etc. So this is actually a very hard question to answer to, because I don't think there's a secret formula, and it just comes down to have enough experience to being able to develop a vision and kind of know what you want your mix to sound like, and then use your experience and the tool at your disposal to get as close as possible to that while engineering and reamping. One suggestion that I could give is to listen back to your mixes and try to connect in your mind like the good and bad results with the source you had, so like the arrangement and production choices, the gear, the technique of the player, the recording chain, and so on. So of course each situation is very specific depending on all of these things, but you will kind of start developing a problem solving skill that I think will be very helpful when trying to create new tones. I really think that the better a song is written and produced, the better the mix will sound. So when I'm producing, I'm always thinking in terms of the final result. So like filling frequency gaps, trying to like develop release intention in the arrangement, and that really helps the mix. So yeah, keep that in mind, and also try to reference as much as possible and try to understand why the mixes you like sound the way they do. Chris Swebaka is asking, hello, pretty simple question. How do you go about guitar panning? Typically, I always hear the same thing about panning guitars at 100% left-right for metal productions, but I feel like when it comes down to listening in a car, the guitars somewhat disappear. I have been panning around 92-96% depending, but just wanted to know your approach with this. Big fan of your work, thanks. Well, thank you, really happy you like my work, and to answer your question, most of the times, yeah, I just pan them 100% left and right if we're talking about the main rhythm guitars, whereas like additional guitars, octaves and stuff, I just pan them wherever I feel like they fit better with the arrangement. If you feel like your guitars are disappearing in your car, first of all, let's say check the same songs in other cars and make sure the problem is consistent and it's not just your sound system, which sounds weird. If the problem is still there, it might be a balance issue, so you could just turn it up in the mix, or it might be an EQ issue, so you might want to take a look at the mid-range EQ on your guitars, or it might also be a phase issue if you're using like weird stereo wideners or stuff like that. Next question comes from Give Me the Head of Jesus Christ, who is actually Mattia, the lead singer in Defamed, and he asks, how important is Topino in your productions? So for those who don't know, Topino is actually the nickname of my cat Loki, and I'm gonna say that he is fundamental when producing Defamed because he sets the mood for the tracking sessions. So here's a fun fact for you. The first tracking session that I did after getting the cat was for Drowning Sulfurs, an epilogue to The Arrogant, where Mattia was singing at the time, and so he had the chance to meet Loki the cat when he was just 2 months old, I think, and they've been great friends ever since. Speaking of my cat, my friend Ramjin asks, have you ever thought about making a video series called Mixing with Topino? Okay, so first of all, you can try and make my cat sit here for more than 10 seconds, and if you can achieve that, I will consider it. But honestly, I'm not really into mixing tutorial at this point in time. I just prefer to like make more creative videos about production and arrangement when I can. So maybe I will do producing with Topino, who knows. Filippo from The End at the Beginning is asking quick advice on how to place overhead and room microphones for drums. So of course I can't really go into detail here because it will take so long, but yeah, a couple of things will be, make sure your left and right overhead microphones are placed at the same distance from the snare, so you can use an XLR cable to measure that. This way the snare will be centered in your stereo image and in the overhead tracks. Another thing could be maybe try to avoid placing the overhead microphones too close to the walls, or at least use some panels. This way they will capture mostly the direct signal coming from the kit and not the reflection as well, so they will sound a bit cleaner. That's not always true for rooms. Sometimes for rooms, if you want a bigger room sound but you have a smaller room, you might just want to place the microphones near the walls. This way they capture both the direct and the reflected sound. Next, Natalino D'Amato is asking me if Otis, who by the way is the singer in The Wind Covenant, if Otis was a dress, would you wear him? Alright, final question for today is by Pietro Zamboni. He's asking, what are you using to tune distorted vocals? Waves tune often generates clicks and pops. So I'm assuming he means screaming vocals, and I have to say I still haven't found a piece of software or a plugin that can correctly track the pitch of screaming vocals all the time. It really depends on the specific singer and on the screaming technique, but if you think about it, I mean, screaming vocals are not really easy for a plugin to detect, because it's not just a straight pitch, but it also has a ton of disturbance and distortion on it. So yeah, it's understandable why it's hard for software to do that. But whenever possible, I just ask the singer to redo the take until it's as close to perfect as possible. But yeah, if you guys know of any software that can do it well, please let me know in the comments, because it will be super useful. And if you instead only mean just distorted vocals, then I will just say tune them before the distortion when they're still clean, because they're easier for the software to detect. That's it. Hope you enjoyed my first Q&A video. Please feel free to leave more questions in the comments, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.